Thank you very much for everyone who's stuck with us. I would like to formally welcome you to the AGM for Action for ME. We have some apologies from trustees, which is Sue Hardy, Andy Dugan, Matt Simmons, Ed Stevens, Jane Young and Colin Batten. And Catherine Thomas has resigned as a trustee since the last AGM, but is very kindly staying on to offer ad hoc advice to the policy group, which is fantastic. Hopefully you've all got a copy of the minutes of the last AGM. I do not intend to go through them in detail, but if anyone has any questions relating to them, then I'll take them now. I know it's a very exciting document, but no questions. Great. I'm now going to hand you over to Sonia to give the Chief Executive's report.
Okay, so given that I've already spoken once today, I decided you didn't want to see me or hear me lots throughout the afternoon. So I am going to engage a few other people in this presentation. So I have the job of looking back and talking about the things that we've achieved over the last year. And it's always very strange because our year ends at the end of March and here we are in November. So we don't stick strictly to what happened within that financial year, but you do have the annual report on the table and you can read about the things that we've done. But we are going to bring in some other things that have happened over the last 6 months as well. And I have to say, it's been a phenomenal year. We had significant growth in the last financial year, and that's really important, not just to make us bigger and give us more money and have more staff, but actually to be able to reach more people and to make a difference to more people's lives. During that time, we also had the merger with AIM, and we are now an organisation that delivers services to children, young people and adults. We haven't yet got that right. There's still more work that we need to do in terms of integrating our service provision and to make sure that we give more funding and more priority to children and young people. And that is certainly very much on the agenda for us going forward. So some of you will recognise the words Improve, Inspire, Invest. This is our strategy that we launched in 2016 on the back of significant consultation with our stakeholder group, so people that receive our services, professionals we work with, people that give us money, our community fundraisers and so on. And it was very exciting to get to the point of being able to launch our new strategy, and it's with great excitement and some grown, I guess, that we'll be doing it again next year. We're almost, we're over halfway through our 5-year strategy, and we always have to plan 18 months in advance. So our conference next year will be an opportunity to engage with what our new strategy will look like. I think it's really important to say that there is just so much need out there. I have the most amazing team. They're committed, they're dedicated, they go above and beyond. But as I said to them in a team meeting recently, they could deliver 24/7 and we still wouldn't be able to reach the need that is out there. And sometimes we have to say no. And what we need to do is be very clear about what we can do, but also what we can't do. And I'm not quite sure we've completely got that balance right yet. And you will hear about all the amazing things that we've done and the over-delivering that we've achieved this last year. All of that is underpinned by our values, collaboration, clarity, courage and empathy. I know them off by heart. I don't know why I'm having to read them. And all of that underpins our purpose to end the ignorance, injustice and neglect experienced by children and adults with ME. So I'm now going to hand over to Clare, who's our Head of Comms and Engagement, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about the work that we've been doing.
Hiya. I'd like to start with a quote from Alice, actually, who spoke this morning. She said, "When I got my diagnosis, it was a relief in a way, after months of being looked at like I was from outer space. I'd been tormenting myself. Maybe I wasn't really ill after all." Well, obviously she was, but that feeling of being invisible and of doubting yourself is something that I'm sure is familiar to many people here. One of the most important things we do as part of our Improve work is to support people with ME to feel connected with each other, to feel visible, to be seen. So last year, more than 1.9 million people saw posts from or about Action for ME on their Facebook feed. For some people, that's a chance to learn about ME and its impact. But for those who already know all too well about the impact of ME, it helps them know that they're not alone. We also support people to connect through our 3 peer support forums, one for children and young people, one for parents of children with ME, and one for adults. More than 2,780 people are registered to use those forums. I know some of people go on there every day, and for many of them that's a real lifeline. Our Mentor ME project in Scotland, which won Most Promising Disability and Health Project at the Scottish Mentoring Network Recognition Awards, connects people with ME so that they have mentors who have experience of the illness to support them to feel confident in making decisions that are right for them. We also support people to make informed decisions. One of those people is Chloe, who you can see up on the screen behind me. Chloe was one of the more than 1,100 people who visited our website every day on average. Now, I knew we'd done pretty well, but that's a 148% increase on visits on the previous year, which was a lovely shock. Most of those visits are for the first time as well, so that means that we're reaching more people with ME. They downloaded our information and support resources around 20 times every hour. Our information and support officers gave one-to-one support to 1,100 people. Our welfare advice service gave support more than 860 times. What do those numbers actually mean, though? Well, they mean that people with ME make connections that help them feel better understood. They mean that people with ME have access to the facts that they need to make informed decisions. But it also means that we continue to learn from them about their experiences and what they need from us. And also, crucially, that we use this knowledge to inform how we influence and inspire the professionals and policymakers that can make a long-term difference to their lives. So that is the blue bits of the annual report. It's colour-coded very carefully. Some examples might be that Sophie, who led our brilliant welfare benefits workshop today, and her colleague Alice, supporting people to access the welfare benefits they're entitled to. Our children's services team ensure that parents not only understand their sons and daughters' rights when it comes to accessing education, but they also feel confident to advocate for those rights. So what we do is we take their stories with their permission and use them not only to raise awareness and understanding of ME, but also to help shape our programme of policy and engagement work. So one of those parents might come to us advice and we support them to engage with their child's school, but they might also be willing to speak to an education journalist and let us use their story as an example of the impact that good or bad practice can make when we go to ministers and when we develop resources for the professionals working directly with people with ME. So you've already heard from Sonia about our international work and about how advocating at that World Health Organization level can result in policy changes that improve lives. In terms of the work we're doing nationally, the experiences of those people, like Chloe, like Oliver, who's on the front of the annual report, helped inform the 6 new resources that we produced for health and social care professionals last year. That's professional briefings for occupational therapists, for physios, our toolkit for pharmacists, shared with more than 10,000 pharmacy professionals, and our 4 webinars, which were shared with more than 250 GPs, nurses, and other frontline clinicians. And the feedback from those was essentially more please. The experiences of those people with ME also form the backbone of our responses to 10 government consultations on welfare benefits, on healthcare, on transport, on employment, and on education, not just to the UK government as a whole, but also in Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Now, for many, including me, the most important of these was the consultation by NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. It's not the first time that you've heard about that consultation today. Margaret spoke about it, Phil spoke about it, and what we did was work collaboratively with other charities as part of Forward ME to highlight NICE's ethical obligation to present a clear picture of the evidence for diagnosing and managing ME. Now, an essential part of that evidence brings us back again to the experiences of Chloe, of Oliver, of Alice. What's your experience? What treatment approaches have helped you or not? It's our job to ensure that people like Oliver and Chloe and Alice and all of you have your voices heard. The experience of patients must sit at the heart of the guideline development process, and that's the backbone of our policy and engagement work. The other kind of evidence we need comes from investment in well-designed, properly conducted biomedical research that helps us answer the many questions this illness still raises. I'm going to hand you back to Sonia now to talk about this investment and the part we have to play in that.
Okay, so thank you, Claire. I did a great job there. As Claire said, part of our strategy, about 20% of our work is focused on research, and at the heart of that is collaboration. You've heard that word several times during the day today, but we do try and work with other organisations and bring people together to increase interest and investment in research. One way that we do that is through the UK CFSME Research Collaborative, the CMRC, which again you've heard about today. We were a founding member of that group, which started about 5-6 years ago, and we've continued to provide the Secretariat support for that. We organised the annual conference, and the conference we had in Bristol in September was named as the most successful conference yet for the Research Collaborative. We got really positive feedback, and we have international researchers as well as UK-based researchers, people living with the illness, carers, and also quite a high number of health professionals for the first time this year. Within the Research Collaborative, we've worked to establish 3 priorities that we are now going to be driving forwards as a group. We are looking to establish some form of increased investment in biomedical research, and we have ongoing discussions with the Medical Research Council and the National Institute of Health Research. Those are going very positively. We're hoping they're actually going to lead to action, and there is a number of discussions that are taking place, meetings that are planned, and hopefully in the new year we might have something to report as a result of that. The patient advisory group that Phil mentioned earlier on are very actively involved in that, and Clare actually has been supporting when needed members of that group. We're really passionately committed to ensuring that the voice of people living with this illness is at the heart of everything that we do, and that includes our work through the Research Collaborative. You heard Neil talk earlier on about the funding that we've got for Marissa, and it was great to talk to you earlier, Marissa, and hear your excitement and enthusiasm about the PhD studentship. And we are investing £182,000 over 3 years into the PhD studentship at Sussex University, but also one at Edinburgh University with Professor Chris Ponting. And what's really exciting, aside from the fact we've got 2 amazing PhD students, is that we have also managed to receive match funding for both of those PhD studentships. Sussex University are paying for half of the studentship, money that they wouldn't have paid out otherwise, and the other one is the Scottish Government through the Chief Scientist's Office. We had a meeting, I can't remember how long ago, probably nearly a year ago now, where we just sort of said, you're not really doing much in Scotland. There's no commitment in research, biomedical research from Scotland. Aren't you a little bit embarrassed about that? Don't you think you could be doing more? And we came away with a commitment to joint fund the PhD studentship, and that's now in place and progressing well. That's not enough, but at least it's a starting point. One of the research projects that we were involved in funding a number of years ago now was the UK Biobank for ME/CFS called CureME. And we worked with the ME Association and ME Research UK and a private donor to jointly fund the setup over a number of years of the Biobank, and the ME Association have continued to support that thereafter. And I'm really pleased. I met Kate last night, actually. Late yesterday afternoon, I went to the Biobank for a meeting there to discuss various things, and there is an exciting announcement to be made later on at the end of this session to do with research. But I had the opportunity to meet Kate, who is a research fellow at the Biobank, and we just thought it was a great opportunity to showcase the impact of our funding and what can be achieved as a result of that funding and by working collaboratively with others. And Kate also has a small announcement to make too. So I'm just going to hand over to Kate for a moment.
Hi there, my name is Kate. I recently started working for the CureME team as a research fellow and epidemiologist, and I wanted to do a plug about the Biobank. So since the start of it, we've been able to have rigorous diagnostic criteria of only confirmed cases of ME/CFS. So we use either the Canadian consensus criteria, the FACUDA, that many of you have heard of, or the IOM. And this makes the findings of our study more comparable across other studies that might use only one diagnostic criteria. Currently, the Biobank holds over 35,000 aliquots of blood derivatives. So we take blood from a participant, that gets processed into 7 different samples, and then we further fraction that into an average of 47 aliquots per participant contact. So every time we come in contact with a participant, that's how many bits of aliquots that we get. Our research nurses are highly trained in seeing both mildly and moderately affected and severely affected. And so they do visit homes for those who are severely affected. And they take detailed clinical data, anywhere from height and weight to hand grip strength, which we've recently had a publication on. If you check out Frontiers in Neurology, it's very exciting. We are unique in that, like I said, that we include those who are severely affected, and we also have healthy controls and cases of MS so that we can compare our findings. We currently have baseline data for about 600 participants, a second follow-up for half of those, and in the next 2 years, we plan to follow up a subset of our participants who are for their 4 times, so a total of 6 follow-ups for our participants. We also plan to increase substantially to attend to the needs of the research in this area. So currently, we've shared samples now with researchers within the UK and then in 3 other continents. Brazil, Israel, a few other places. It's been very exciting to share our samples. Our next steps I wanted to talk to you about is that we want to continue longitudinal recruitment of these participants. We want to follow them up. We want to see how the disease progresses. We also want to recruit more people. It's never enough, is it, for a study? We always want more. And we also want to increase the number of severely affected participants in our study as well. We want to continue studies on immunology, on gene expression, and as well as clinical and epidemiological studies. And we want to continue to collaborate with our European partners and with partners across the globe. And I have a little announcement. So yesterday, we are very pleased to receive this prestigious award from the UK Clinical Research Collaboration Tissue Directory and Coordination Center yesterday. So this was received by only 2 biobanks who received honorable mention. And this is very exciting for us because we're a very small disease-specific biobank, and we are going up against very large biobanks who are either general biobanks or are high-profile diseases. So this is our little biobank, which is started by Action for ME, really helped us to get us off the ground, and here we are now.
So thank you, Kate, and doing that so last minute. It's fantastic to hear that the ME Biobank has been so fortunate to win the award. But what that actually means, as well as really recognising the quality of the work that the team does, it puts ME/CFS up there in the limelight in a way that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. So I just want to finish off the sort of reflecting back on the last year, 18 months, by really thanking my team. It's great to be able to stand up here and look like I should take the credit for everything. But actually, I have an amazing team that work behind the scenes, sometimes in profile in the way that Clare has done today. And I really just want to acknowledge all their hard work not just the paid staff, but the 70-odd volunteers that we have working at home, recording podcasts on our Interaction magazine, those that come into the office and help us, those people that are out there fundraising for us, and of course our board of trustees, all of whom do this on a voluntary basis. So I just want to say a really big thank you to everybody that helps and supports us achieve what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. I'm going to hand you over to the sexy subject of finance and Philip.
In that order. Right. Thank you, Jonah. Right. Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Philip Marsden, and I'm your treasurer. And I'm just going to take you through the financial results for last year, remembering that last year means the year to 31st of March 2018. It was a good year, so it's a great pleasure to do this. If we look first at the, if I get the right order, sorry about this. Yes, so if we move first to the income and expenditure account. Again, you have to always keep your slides in the right order. Here we are. Well, firstly, the blue columns that you see are our income, and the orange columns are our expenditure. And the difference, of course, is the surplus or deficit. So where the blue column is higher than the orange column, we have a surplus, and where it's less, then it's a deficit. Now you can see from that trend over 5 years, from 2014 up to the year we're looking at, 2018, we've got, if you smoothed it, it would be a gradual increase, but of course nothing is smooth. If you look back at 2014, there we had a small deficit because the orange column was bigger than the blue column. And we were able to, at that time, spend from a large legacy we'd had in, I think, 2010. And then 2015, 2016, we built up surpluses. Income exceeded our expenditure. Due to some special, exceptional donation in 2015, and we had some exceptional legacies in 2016. And last year, 2017, income went back down to what I would call a more normal level. As you can see, we didn't have any exceptional income. We didn't have the special legacies of the previous year. And our expenditure was carried on, so we had a small deficit last year, which was planned. We were spending some of the surplus from previous years. But in 2018, so the year that we're looking at now, March 2018, you can see that income, the blue column, rose by about 86% from 2017. We did have exceptional income in the year, and I'll come on to that. But anyway, it was a very good year for income. And we reached 1,269,000, which is excellent for us. Expenditure went up as well, so we are spending more on average each year. And our expenditure went up 41% last year. That, of course, reflects inclusion of the the children and young people's services for the first time last year, because AIM, you'll remember AIM merged with us in April 2017, so we had a full year of the costs of those services. We also spent money starting the International Advocacy Project, which Sonia has told us about earlier, our work with the WHO, influencing the WHO. And we also are making a bigger investment in income generation to build the charity for the future. But we had a surplus in the year of 222,000, so that's a substantial surplus. And we will look now how the income came in. So look at incoming resources, as we call it. It's our income. Now, the big blue slice there is what we call voluntary income, and that's really donations and legacies. And that was 80% of our income in the year. It was really donations and legacies. And this slice was very well up on 2017. In fact, it was nearly double. Our voluntary income nearly doubled last year, mainly due to two exceptional legacies, again, which is really nice to have. They were about £230,000 between the two of them. We also had the Big Give Christmas Challenge last year, which is now running again this year as we speak. And we had a substantial income from that. And we had some additional grant income, and I'll come on to that later. The orange slice is income from charitable activities. Charitable activities are subscriptions and conference fees mainly, and tends to be very steady each year, and indeed was unchanged in this year. The grey slice is other income, which is really everything else. Normally quite small, being just other income. This year it was large at about £129,000, and that's because we had a fundraising dinner in the year, which itself raised £94,000 gross income. So let's look at that blue slice in a bit more detail, which is our voluntary income. And here is the voluntary income now divided up into its components. Starting at the top left, the dark blue slice is trusts. Now this is normally pretty steady income for us as a charity. We get our income from a wide range of trusts who make grants to us each year, hopefully. And in fact, so that was the case in the year. In fact, we got 17% more in 2018 than we did in the previous year, so that went up nicely. The orange slice, top right-hand corner, is donations and appeals. And this is the component which was very greatly up. It was 93% up on the previous year. And this was primarily due to Big Give Christmas Challenge to an extent, and other pledges and donations in general. So it was very well up on the previous year. The grey slide is specifically legacies, and as I mentioned, we had two exceptional legacies, nearly £230,000 last year. So that slice is much bigger than it was in 2017. And then the other slice, which is well up, is the green one, which is grant income. And that is up chiefly due to a £75,000 underspend on a project. It was the Brain in Pain study, which came to a successful close in the year, and there was £75,000 underspent. So that came back into our income to spend on other projects. So that explains why that was up. So a very good year for income, greatly helped, of course, by the legacies. But we had Big Give, and we had the Dragonfly dinner, the fundraising dinner. If we look at the resources expended, so this is the expenditure side, and we spent just over £1 million. So we got just over £1.2 million income in, and we've spent about £1 million in the year. That spending, as I mentioned before, was 41% up on the previous year, so we are able to spend significantly more than we were in the past. The large slice there, the orange slice, is charitable activities, which is the majority of our spend. It's 77% of our spend is on charitable activities. What does that mean? Well, it's all the things that we want to do as a charity. So it's research, information, all the services that we provide, welfare services and phone lines, influencing and awareness activities, all of the key things that we do. The blue slice, which is the next biggest one, is the cost of generating income, which was up 19% on the previous year, which given that our income was up 86%, that sounds like a good return. We must always remember that when we get legacies, they do tend to be exceptional. We can't depend on them the next year. The cost, just to dwell a little bit on the costs of raising our money, we look at a ratio, which is the cost that we expend on raising every pound of income. That's a very important ratio to us. Last year, we raised £5.50 of income for every pound of cost that we spent generating it, which compares to £3.75 the previous year. So we got a lot more income, a lot more bang for our bucks in 2018 than the previous year. But we did get those exceptional legacies, which we can't depend on each year. Let's just take a more detailed look now at the charitable activities, so that orange slice, because that's most of what we spend and is the important part of what we spend. So let's just looking at charitable activities. The biggest part of the of charitable activities, it's 69% of our spend, is on information and services. So that's the biggest part. And that's information, the support services, including the telephone lines. It's children's support now that we have AIM merged in with us. It's the online ME centre, welfare advice services. All these different activities are discussed in the trustees' report, so you can get more detail on what we're doing in those. So that orange slice composes our spend on all those key services. The grey slice, which is a smaller one, is research, and that's 10% of the spend within charitable activities. That's reduced from 2017, so we spent less on research as projects have completed during the year and at the end of the previous year. And our funding for the 2 PhDs that we've talked of, Sonny's talked about, and indeed the fellowship had not started in that year. We are now spending on them in this year. And the blue slice, which is communications and policy, which is about a quarter of our spend within charitable activities, that's the part which includes influencing government and the NHS and indeed the WHO. And that we've spent quite a lot of money on that, not least because we've started that international advocacy project. So that is the spend side, which was well up on the previous year. If we just come on now to accumulated funds. Now, accumulated funds is our capital. This is the capital of the charity going forward, and represents what we've got to spend, still got there in reserve to spend for the future. And here is our accumulated funds position, and you can see how it's moved up over the last 5 years. And they've risen now to 733,000 in 2018, up from 511,000 the previous year. So that's a 43% increase last year due to the surplus that we generated. The orange section, just looking at each component of that column, so looking at the 2018 column, the orange section, the one in the middle, is restricted funds. Now, these are funds which the donor has restricted us as to what we can spend it on. So typically they'll be spent on research, specific research projects, or other projects which we are doing in the charity. But we can't choose what we spend them on. It's to be spent purely on what the donor says they want it to be spent on. But they're up by £120,000, and it's mainly for additional research projects, money which has come in, but also for the peer mentoring and other support projects. The grey section of that column, which is the top bit, which is 26% of our funds, 194,000. Those are what we called designated funds. So those are funds which we, as a charity, designate towards the spending on specific projects. we make a choice as to how we spend that money. We can undesignate it if we needed to spend it on something else, so there's flexibility in there, but we've designated that money mainly for the international advocacy projects, so we know how much we've got to spend on it going forward, so we put that money on one side and designate it, and also for the pilot regional advocacy project, so we've got money set aside for that. And then the blue section, the bit at the bottom, is what we call just unrestricted general funds, which we can use for any purpose. And they're 306,000, about the same as the previous year. So, the unrestricted general funds, so the blue and the grey sections together, so it's the unrestricted and the designated, together total 500,000 and are therefore at a very healthy level at the end of last year. In fact, they represented just over 6.5 times our average monthly spend for keeping the charity going, and that's another very important ratio for us and for any charity, is that we have sufficient accumulated funds to cover a number of months' normal expenditure. And 6.6 times is quite high. However, a significant proportion of that is already designated to two particular projects, international advocacy and the regional advocacy projects. So if we take away the designated, just the unrestricted is at 4.6 times the average monthly spend, which is a bit low, but still very healthy, and means that this year we can spend more money, and we can expect, and we are budgeting for a deficit this year, because we don't want to sit on a large amount of money. We want to spend it for the benefit of our members, for people with ME and their carers, and that's what we're doing. So we expect the reserves to go down this year. The current year has started satisfactorily, started well. In fact, we've got the Big Give Christmas Challenge on right now, so this is a very, very important week for us, and Ogden in particular is spending a lot of effort, twisting arms. Mine was, anyway. And it looks like being very successful, I think, from the numbers coming in today. So that's great. That's great. And we've got another fundraising dinner in March too, which hopefully will be very successful again too. So this year should be, fingers crossed, another good year. But our expenditure is going up in line with our income. So we're spending a lot more on people with ME services for them as well. I suppose the only final point I can make is that given it's Big Give Week, it would be really nice for everybody to make a small contribution to Big Give. Don't forget, every donation is immediately doubled up by the matched pot of money that we have. And indeed, hopefully we get gift aid on the top. So it runs for 1 week, started yesterday, finishes next Tuesday. So that's my plug for Big Give. Hopefully Ogden will be happy with that. So that's all that I want to say formally. Do you have any questions? And I'll be delighted to try to answer any questions you have on our income, expenditure, our nice surplus this year, on the accumulated funds that we have, but we're planning to spend. We won't prolong that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Okay, I think prior to moving on to the kind of forward look and the kind of appointment of new trustees, just to formally note the approval of the appointment of Moore Stevens as the auditor of the charity, and the authorisation of the trustees of the charity to fix the word I can never say, remuneration, there you go, of the auditors. So just to note that. Right, we have a proposal to the appointment of Alison Death, Phil Murray as new members and trustees of the charity, and of Matt Simmons, Colin Batten and Philip Marsden as continuing members of the trustee of the charity, subject to the result of the postal ballot, which I'll ask Sonia to read the results of.
Okay, so Phil and Alison are new members joining. There were 29 yeses, 0 no's and 1 no preference for Phil. And for Alison, 26 yeses, 1 no and 3 no preferences. I have to say you do really well to get no preferences and no's, so everybody always gets some. So that's great. Matt and Colin have been, were on the board last year, appointed up until this AGM. Colin came across from AIM, and Matt came on as a trustee for a year before coming to vote. So Matt had 24 yeses, 2 no's and 4 no preferences. Colin had 26 yeses, 3 no's and 1 no preference. And then we have Phil Marsden, who you've just heard speak, and Jane Young, who's actually in the States at the moment, so couldn't be here with us, who are staying on for exceptional terms. Philip had 27 yeses, 1 no and 2 no preferences. Jane Young had 29 yeses, 0 no's and 1 no preference.
Great. Thank you very much. And also to note Lucy Goodwill and Glenn Buchanan as new members to the board with observer status. This is part of our succession planning for the Board of Trustees, just to ensure that we have a really, really good pool of trustees, and they'll come for formal vote and acceptance to the AGM next year. Right, now I'm going to hand you back to Sonia for the forward look.
Okay, so this is the last thing you'll hear from me today. You'll be relieved to hear. I get the really great opportunity to share with you the plans for the future year, some of which are outlined in the annual reports that you've got on the tables. So you heard Clare talk about the work that we're doing to improve people's lives, and I'm just going to give you a small snapshot of the things that we've got planned. Just a few months ago, we appointed an advocacy coordinator, Tori Jones, to join us. She is going to be providing independent advocacy. What that means is that she's going to be working with individuals, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes via telephone, sometimes via Skype, alongside some project workers which we've just interviewed for this week and volunteers that we're recruiting, to help people have their rights and their needs met, and to help them ensure that they can navigate the complex systems that are in place around health, welfare, etc. And that's a new service that we're launching that has been possible as a result of the extra income that we've been able to secure. So in the one of the slides that Philip showed you, he talked about designated funds. That's money that the board decided some time ago that we would use to put alongside some grant funding, some money that we got from a trust, to be able to set up this new service. And I think it's really exciting for me because 5 years ago, we sat in this room, or maybe not all of you, but some of you, sat in this room and talked about the needs of people with ME that are not currently being met, and providing independent advocacy to individuals was something that came across very loudly to us. We then did a piece of work going out and speaking to people to find out more about what that would look like and what needs people had, and then we have worked for 4 years to try and bring in the funds to do that. So it's with great excitement that we're going to open our doors next year, early next year, to be able to deliver that service. We will continue to provide information and support to people. You heard Clare talk about what that looks like and some of the impact of that, and to continue developing our resources to reach more professionals as well as people and their families. We, as part of that, we're going to be spending money on our website refresh, very sexily named, but essentially it's a huge piece of work. We've got a massive website which actually provides a lot of information. We call it our online ME centre rather than just a website. But there's a lot of work to do to keep that up to date, to make sure that it reflects what we're saying about things like the PACE trial and what's happening with NICE, etc., as well as updating the information on there. So Clare and the team will be working hard to do that. We also, a couple of years ago, talked about, again, I think here at a conference AGM, about how we could provide some support to people at home to help them with their daily needs and independent living. So, for example, you've got a garden, you're too ill to be able to look after it, and it's just becoming overgrown, and there's somebody in your local community who would volunteer to come in because they've always wanted to have their own garden. They've been on an allotment waiting list for ages, and it's a win-win situation. You get somebody to help you out in the garden, they get an opportunity to have a garden, and hopefully people would feel supported and build relationships as a result of that. That idea we called ConnectME, and one of our very generous donors gave us some money to look at how we can actually set that up through some form of connecting service. A piece of work is being done to look at that. It's fraught with problems, and it was a great idea, but as always, it's much more complicated to deliver, and it's going to cost us a lot more money than we thought it might. But the people that are working with us to explore that have been out talking to corporates and have got some really exciting developments there that they want to present back to us in the new year, with potential partnerships with big corporates that might help us be able to deliver that. We have more to do, as I said earlier, to integrate our children, young people and adult services, and to make sure that we reach as many people as possible. We don't want to drop our service delivery and reduce what we're doing, but we also need to be careful that we don't try and over-deliver, because we just don't have the capacity to do that. But we do want to make it smoother and easier for people to access our services. And you also heard Clare talk about the peer mentoring project, which has been a fantastic project in Scotland, which Avril, who's sat very quietly at the back there, has been leading and done an absolutely amazing job for us. And there's a project called EducateME, which we received big lottery awards for all funding for in Scotland, which is really exploring how we can do more to support children in education. And that's working with young people, parents, teachers and education authorities to see what can be delivered. And they've had quite a big breakthrough over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully there'll be some exciting news about that at next year's AGM. In terms of our Inspire strand of our strategy, Sam mentioned, so there you are, I was thinking, where are you? Sam mentioned earlier on a survey that we'll be launching in ME Awareness Month in May next year. That's a survey we do every 5 years to identify, to get an update picture of the needs of people living with ME around health, education, employment, welfare, etc. And for the first time, we'll be including children and young people within that. And the team, who are equally as ambitious as I am, are hoping to reach 5,000 people. Last time we reached around 2,000, just over, so they're almost doubling that, which is brilliant. Children and young people are going to continue to be a priority area for us, and we really want to invest in the children and young people's services, particularly around education, and build that understanding within the education field. We're going to continue supporting the work of Forward ME, and Sam has now picked that up. And as you heard from Margaret, there's an awful lot that's going to be happening over the next year, and that includes the work with NICE and also all the international advocacy work that I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, our Invest strand. We are going to continue funding research in the way that I described with the PhD studentships, and we will continue to support the work of the Research Collaborative, and that includes playing a very proactive role in the new ME Education Group that's recently been established, as I mentioned earlier on. We also want to look at how we can use technology better, and that's going to involve some investment at some point. And we really want to do that to be able to reduce the isolation, particularly for children and young people, but also for adults. And given that I can no longer talk and get my words out without muddling them up, I'd just like to finish by making an announcement, which I'm incredibly excited about. I got the go-ahead at about 2:55 this afternoon to be able to share this with you. In our strategy, we set out that we would fund a fellowship alongside the PhD studentships. And that was really because we were investing in PhD students, and they'd get to the end of their studentship and want to stay in the field but couldn't find funding to be able to stay in the ME field, and gone off and done amazing things in other fields, but that's just not good enough, because we need them and their expertise and their skills and their kind of passion to work in this field. So we're already, I was going to announce a fellowship today, but alongside that, I have been working with the National Institutes of Health in the United States, and said, wouldn't it be really fantastic if we could do something together to be able to fund a fellowship together that could spend a year in the States working at the NIH collaborative centres, and then a year in the UK, or vice versa, spending some time here with the things that we're hoping to develop over the next year, particularly with the Biobank team, because they receive NIH funding. Wouldn't it be great to be able to jointly fund somebody to be able to get that experience and look at how we can increase international international collaboration at a research level. And so that conversation has been going on for quite some time, and I went to see, the reason I was at the Biobank yesterday was to talk to Lewis Nackol about the possibility of doing that, and would he be open to a conversation. He said, yes, I'm open to a conversation and exploring that. And we now have some interest from the centre leads in the States to also join that conversation, which means that it's very likely we can now make this happen. I think that's a massive breakthrough for us. It's as a small charity, to be able to do something with a big mainstream funder like the NIH, who will provide the research costs, and to be able to bring that expertise into the UK and hopefully help us strengthen what we're doing here. So I'm really, really pleased that I'm able to share that today and that you heard it first. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, that concludes our formal business. Just a few thank yous. Thank you very much for all our speakers, to Phil, to Neil, to Alice, and to Margaret, who I think left during lunch, to Sue and Sophie for leading the workshops. A massive thank you to all the staff that helped make this event happen, and particularly Anna and Clare, who made sure it did happen and on time, and ensured that you all came back from your lunch and your coffees. I want to take a moment for a personal thanks to the trustees, both who are here and those who are not able to be here, who all give up an amazing amount of time to support this charity. And I think we're incredibly lucky to have such a good board of trustees who give so much time and support. And I know from talking to other charities, we are very, very lucky in that. Alan and Overy, who have been a wonderful supporter of ours, who not only provide this room for our AGM, but also provide a lot of kind of ad hoc support and advice and rooms for our other meetings. And most importantly, you for all coming and for bearing with us and for hopefully having a nice day with us all. So thank you so much. Have a safe journey home. And I was going to say good night, but it's not quite a good night. But yeah. Thank you very much.